This week on The Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. But let's throw caution into the wind. It's all about villains this week. Welcome to The Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent. We're a show that aims to just entertain, talking about geeky stuff, nerdy stuff, and going off on tangents.
And to brighten your day.
So, this week, we're going to talk about villains and talk about our favorite villains, talk about what makes a good villain. But first,
it's time for the Random Roundup.
All right, so
Hold on.
who do we want to start with this random roundup?
We need to introduce ourselves.
Oh, I'm Brett Anderson, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm joined with Eric.
Hello.
Punk Lips McGee.
It is I, Enrico.
And Matt Palmer.
Hello.
Wake up, America. You're not live on the
Podcast.
On the podcast.
That's true, but you could be kind of live if you sent us a voicemail or an email.
If you want to be on the show, yeah. 801-769-6668. That's the voicemail line.
I wonder if we're scaring people off with that.
That's
with that phone
66.
number.
I could change the number.
No, it's fine.
No, it's easy to
we
remember.
like that number. Yeah.
There's a lot of sixes.
It makes it so I can remember it, so I can actually memorize it, you know? We don't memorize numbers anymore. You know?
We
Like,
don't.
everything's in my phone, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
we
someone
don't.
be like, hey, what's your number? I'm like, oh, what if I mix up two numbers? Let me double check and look at that.
Yeah, my wife called me yesterday for my daughter's social security number, and I had to go find the card for it where we keep it and look it up because I don't have it memorized.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
memorize the numbers anymore either. I'm like, I should, because if my phone dies, I need to
don't
call my
think
wife.
I don't think, oh, my mind went blank. I'm like, woo. No, I'm like memorizing social security numbers. All you need to know is your own. I mean, you're going to memorize all your kids' numbers. I mean, you could do that. But
I think it's useful to have because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of times when I've needed it for whatever reason, and I'm like, like a new job or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, oh, yeah. Like,
Random.
what you need to do is like create some sort of list that you can put somewhere that you have a code, and you look at it and you're like, oh, I can figure this code out. And then you're like, okay, now I know that social security number. But anybody else that was looking at it would be like, would be like, huh, what is that? And you're like, so then you pull out your key and then all that stuff. And they're like, don't you just have the card? No, I have it here. And you're like doing all this like code breaking. Okay, here it is.
Upcoming next, how to memorize your social security numbers.
Or how to not.
That's what
memorize
we're
it.
all about now. Just kidding. We have a phone call. Someone's calling us, maybe?
No, I
Oh.
just being not very professional.
Oh.
All right. Okay, so what do you guys have for your random roundup?
So for this week, I'll start. Eric, I think it was last episode, proposed a poll that he wanted to do because he wanted people to follow us on Twitter, and so we could do polls. But then I noticed that Facebook just started doing polls. So I pulled up a
I think
poll.
they have actually been doing it for a while. We just
Well,
didn't know about it.
When it was there and it said new, so
It's
I
new.
figured it was a new thing.
I think polls are awesome. I like
I
doing
think they
polls.
updated it or something because I thought there was polls before. Maybe I'm going.
I think they
crazy.
maybe had, and that for the longest time they always did the trivia.
I think you had to do like polls from an app, not from Facebook. I do remember there being polls around, but I don't think it was from Facebook directly. Anyway, Eric posed the question, which movie's better, Deep Impact or Armageddon? And that's because this year I don't know about celebrate, but
It's the 20th anniversary.
It's been 20 years
20
since
years.
those movies were made, which is pretty crazy to think about. I remember when they came out.
And it was like, wow, it was like a whole thing going on with asteroids for some reason at that time. There was even a made-for-TV movie called Asteroid.
Yeah, there was a big deal.
That was great.
Yeah, so I threw out this poll on Facebook: Deep Impact or Armageddon? And for the most part, well, not for the most part, just straight up, Armageddon won. So it was 54% of the votes went to Armageddon, 46 to Deep Impact. So in other words, the movies are pretty equally bad, and people just had to decide one way or the other.
No, I think Deep Impact is a far better movie than Armageddon.
I was entertained by Deep Impact. I was entertained by both, but I liked Deep Impact. But maybe Matt just doesn't like either
Deep
one.
Impact
Well, from a geologic standpoint,
Deep Impact.
any of these movies are ridiculous.
He's taking. Oh yeah, Matt's
Deep
Matt's
Impact was more
too
emotional.
smart for these movies.
No, the funny thing is, for one of my the class that I teach online, I teach a natural disasters course, and one of the movies that they have to watch is Dante's Peak.
Oh, really? But
And-
the dog.
So
The only thing that's cool about the movie is the dog.
I never actually did
dies.
see Dante's Peak.
But yeah,
does
they-
it have James Bond in it?
It
Yeah,
does.
it does.
Pierce Brosnan.
And then there's Volcano with
Oh yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Is that the one where the volcano like spontaneously comes out of
Yeah,
like,
from Los
LA?
Angeles. Yeah.
I can't do this with you right now.
There were so many movies that
this
were like
time
that.
period, it was all about disaster movies.
There they were. And then studios were just taking ideas from each other through the whole entire time. At the same time was Bug's Life and then Ants. And so it was a crazy time in the movies.
Indeed. But anyway, that's the
Indeed.
poll. Apparently Armageddon is slightly more popular.
I think people just found it more entertaining.
I don't know.
It was a big summer blockbuster movie. I mean, you had big people. Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler.
I think more people saw Armageddon.
I think so.
And I think that's one of the reasons. I think it is a 50-50 thing. But that also might just indicate what movies people have seen.
Yeah.
Right.
Because people vote. Oh, I'm going to vote. I haven't seen either one of these, but I'm going to vote. I just think Armageddon really is the more popular movie. But I do think Deep Impact is a better movie. But if you want to look at the science of it, they're both ridiculous. But that's not why I'm...
Yeah, you don't watch them for the science.
um,
If you want a real bad one, go watch The Core.
Oh,
core.
The
Oh
Core.
yeah, the core. Yeah, there's like a
No, I enjoyed The Core, I
Don't-
think.
Oh, please.
isn't it at one point they get to a part where they're like, it's almost like they're in space, and then finally, I can't even remember. It's weird.
I'm pretty sure they're it's been a long time.
Well,
They're trying to jumpstart the core of the Earth, right? For the magnetic field or something.
Yeah.
Like a bomb or something.
A lot of, some nuclear bombs or...
Ooh. I think I saw it, but I don't remember it. It shows you how much I enjoyed the movie.
Well,
If I don't remember it.
yeah, and then like at the beginning, the core is going weird, so all the birds are like crashing into windows and crashing in because apparently the core affects birds' ability to
Right, because
to
they
fly
use,
so much.
they use magnetic fields to navigate.
All right.
I don't know, maybe they do. I'm no bird scientist, so...
All right, my random roundup is actually about us being random. Because it seems like that's what today's topic is. It's just us being random. Actually, it's not. So I guess a lot of people are having issues with our social media, with us listening to us. I know Anchor is who supports us. We like Anchor. But there's other places you can go and listen to us.
Well, they don't like support us like with anything other than the fact that we're using them.
Oh,
so that's
yeah.
the support.
And it's
there.
free.
It's free.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if they were sponsored. I don't want to, like, they're listening
if
to
they
us.
were a sponsor,
wish.
you should be like, "Where's the money?" But there is no money.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're
Well,
not a
you
sponsor.
can listen to us on your favorite app. You can go to there and you can go, oh, there's other places to talk to. To listen to us. There's Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Public Radio, and Stitcher.
Republic Radio.
Oh,
yeah.
Republic Radio.
And we're just on Stitcher. That's new
And we'll
this
be
week.
on Spoopify.
Spotify.
Spotify. Yeah, Spotify.
We'll be on Spotify. Hopefully when Spotify, I guess, is going through some some changes.
Some sort of changes, so they're like delaying it. So it's like been 6 weeks and we're still not on there. The submission has happened. It's just not.
So it's easy to listen to us, not just with Anchor. So if you're like, I wish I could listen to these guys better, but there's other ways. So
the main
don't
issue,
get discouraged.
The main issue with Anchor was once you start the podcast, you can't come back to it where you left off. It just starts over, and it's really hard to fast forward. You can't just click on the time bar and move it back and forth.
Well,
you can only skip forward 15 seconds at a time.
All the podcasting apps that I've looked at remember where, like, you can pick up where you left off. You can pause it, then come back. It like remembers your thing. Apple Podcasts, because I have an iPhone.
I like Apple Podcasts the best.
Is like really good. And if
you can download it too, and then you can listen to us. Not if you're like, I need something to listen to. Download the podcast, and then you can just on the road. You can listen to us in the car.
Yeah, and then you can give us a review and give us 5 stars. We're that likable, I think.
Give us a review, like us, share us. You know you want to.
Teach your friends how to listen to podcasts, because there's a lot of people who don't know that it's available to them, and there is a show that they'd be interested in.
There's a lot of great podcasts out there for sure. They're a lot of fun.
All right, my roundup is hearkening back to last week when we were talking about moms and ladies.
Moms rock.
My mom listened to the episode, and she gave me told me about some of the movies that she liked as a kid and as an adult.
Well,
and here's her little message here. She says, just for the record, my favorite movies when I was a child were The Wizard of Oz and Rodgers and Hammerstein's made-for-TV Cinderella. And then she says, as it continues, as an adult, I really enjoyed anything with Jimmy Stewart, but Princess Bride ranks near the top.
Oh, that's good.
And and she introduced me to Princess Bride. I remember
Princess Bride is funny. My wife, for some reason, does not like that movie. She finds it boring.
That movie spans generations.
It does.
It's such a good movie.
I think
so
if you don't
good.
grow certain things, sometimes some things take away from.
But I think that it's just such a, I don't know. It's
I
so
just
good.
watched it. So they had a showing in the theater recently, and I went with my wife to see it. And it was a lot of fun to watch it in the theater. And I've read, it's Cary Elwes, who's the star of the movie. He plays the man in the mask.
The Man in the Mask, Wesley.
Wesley, yeah, thank you. He wrote a book called As You Wish, from his famous line in the movie. And it's so interesting. It's just about the making of the movie and how it all went through. And I highly recommend that book, As You Wish. I listened to the audiobook. He reads it, and a lot of the actors that are still alive read their portions of it as well. It's really fun.
Cool.
Really worth the read.
I remember one of my first arguments I had with my wife was over that movie because she didn't like it. I was disappointed that she didn't like a princess.
You were so offended.
Yeah, I was.
You were questioning, like, can this marriage go on?
But it's okay. She still likes Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, so I was willing to compromise.
So let this be a lesson to you, everyone. If you're getting married, have this conversation before you're at the, before you're making your wedding vows or whatever, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be for your wedding. At the altar, I guess, is the general saying for it. But
speaking of weddings, I think early this morning there was the royal wedding, and apparently William and Harry, like as Harry's getting married, but apparently they were in episode 8 of Stormtroopers. But then I think the scene was cut because they were too tall.
they weren't a little short for a stormtrooper.
They're maybe a little too tall because I think they're hiring a bunch of short people to play stormtroopers these days. Because I'm like, Harrison Ford.
In what movie were they?
The Last Jedi.
Oh, The Last Jedi. You just said.
I don't know what I said.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Okay, so The Last Jedi, they were able to.
Well, they shoot
They
it.
got
They shoot it
casted, but then they were too tall.
Well,
they got edited.
They
out.
do those favors for people. We're like, okay,
Yeah, they
we'll
do.
you can dress up as a stormtrooper, and then you don't even know.
Yeah.
Like Daniel Craig was in episode 7.
Yeah, but at least he did the voice, so he's like more of a.
And Simon Pegg.
Yeah, Simon Pegg, but Simon Pegg
He was that one dude.
He was
He was the ugly dude.
Unkar Pluck or
Unkar
whatever,
Pluck, yeah.
or whatever his name is.
Yeah, they had a lot of random people. I was like, okay. Matt Damon?
It's just
was-
JJ's
no.
friends.
Yeah, you
What?
just get JJ's friends in there.
Oh, no, Matt Damon was in Thor Ragnarok. That's where I was like, what?
Ragnarok.
The Ragnarok, yeah.
It's all good.
So I sound like Scooby Doo.
Oh,
Cool.
all right, villains.
Matt, you don't have a movie?
Okay, I do have a movie, but I'll just be quick about it because I didn't watch a classic movie.
Matt's movie review.
It was kind of a classic movie. It doesn't really fit our arbitrary cutoff of 1977, so I think it was 1989.
Oh,
But I watched.
It's not classic.
I watched Steel Magnolias.
Oh, really? I've been
Oh,
wanting
hey.
to watch that forever because of all the people who are in it.
It's very much an 80s movie,
Yeah.
like the 80s
Has Dolly
PG,
Parton.
with Dolly Parton, who actually she's a pretty good actress.
Sally
Actually, I do
Field,
like- she's
Julia
funny.
Roberts. Yeah, it has a.
Sally
great-
Field.
Sally Field
Yeah.
does. Oh wow, her performance in that is so
I
good.
do agree.
Yeah, Sally Field's always.
And especially at the end, you know, when everything's coming together finally, because nothing really happens in that movie except for watching the relationships of these women develop, which is fine. but
Yeah. No, it's good.
there's really not a lot of plot to it.
Get to see the armadillo groom's cake.
Yeah, the armadillo cake.
That's good.
So have you seen it, Brett?
Oh yeah, I've seen
Okay,
it.
you've seen
I
it.
need to see it.
I have it on DVD because my wife. bought
Okay,
it.
she's a fan.
Yeah, she likes it.
Chelsea enjoyed it. Yeah, but it's just an interesting movie. A really all-star cast. It actually has same lady that was in The Apartment, Shirley MacLaine.
Does
I
she
think it's Shirley
play
MacLaine.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, I like Shirley.
So she was in that. So all these movies that I watched, they always tie together somehow. Like it's either the same director or someone's in it or something like that. But anyway,
It's
sort
actually
of like
all
the 5
same
degrees
universe.
of Kevin Bacon, or is it 12 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
You can do something with Shirley MacLaine. I don't think so.
How all these movies, every movie ties into each other. Really,
You can look on IMDb and connect anything at some point.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, Still Magnolias, interesting movie, but we'll leave it at that. Great performances and really emotional ending. But if you can't stand just watching women in a barber shop developing relationships,
would it make me cry?
It might.
It might make
I
you
cry in so many movies.
It might make you cry.
It's no Mr. Feeney, but it might make you cry.
No, I was watching just like Designated Survivor with the new one with Keith Sutherland.
that
and
TV
they
show.
were-
How many seasons is that?
It's only 2. They somehow canceled it, but
Somehow
anything
canceled.
anything that,
Just like, oh man,
how did we do this?
I clicked the
anything
cancel
that has
button on
anything
it.
with family gets me emotional. And that has a lot of family ties because he's the president. He has to take care of his family now. And I was like, oh, this is emotional for me. Anything with family gets me emotional.
Well, I think people are yelling into their phones.
Yeah, seriously.
What you tease this villain thing? Where's the villain?
All right, let's get into villains.
All right. What are your favorite villains? What are the most iconic villains?
Like-
Iconic and like
Well,
good
iconic-
villains are kind of different.
From
things.
pop
Yeah.
culture
Yeah, no,
or
they're different.
books?
There's
I mean,
opinion.
I guess
Anything.
books began with villains. I mean, you had Professor Moriarty. You have King Lear. Isn't he a bad guy? I don't know.
That I don't know Shakespeare well
Kid,
enough.
I don't know.
Let's stick to topics we
You're right.
know about.
Okay, you're right. I should. I just wanted to throw out because I thought Macbeth. I don't know. You're right. I don't
King
know.
Lear, Macbeth, but you realize those are two different plays.
Yeah, I don't know who's the villains in those. Never mind. You're right. That's too far. Let's go.
Iconic villains. Let me just start this off with Darth Vader.
Yeah, Darth Vader. You're right.
You know,
Darth Vader's like number 1 on all lists.
all the list, Darth Vader's number one because they're all made by nostalgic.
He's
you know.
iconic though.
But
That's
yeah,
the thing.
iconic.
Everyone, even if you haven't seen Star Wars,
you know, oh,
it.
that's Star Wars. That's Darth Vader. Yeah, and that's iconic. And I don't think you can get any more iconic than that.
Yeah, as far as a villain, like I was never scared of him as a kid, or I never had fears of him. Maybe that's just me. I wasn't really convinced of him as like this super villain that's just out to.
I think the Emperor is that scary.
Yeah, he's
aspect.
more like that lightning.
Yeah,
killing people.
and he's like, shriveled up looking, wearing a hood. Like I know Darth Vader's got his weird his mask on, but you kind of get you got to like look at that and be like, what am I looking at? But a shriveled up person in a hood is scarier in general than a big plastic mask.
Yes.
It's just the voice. I mean, that's what makes him the best. I mean, no other villain has a voice like Darth Vader.
Yeah, James Earl Jones. He always does an iconic voice.
Yeah. All right, other iconic villains. I mean, there's the horror villains and stuff like that, but I that's almost like a different thing. Although Norman Bates in Psycho,
Norman Bates always comes up
is pretty interesting villain.
I think when I think of a villain, I think of Disney. Disney's Maleficent. She's like the pure evil of evil.
She's super messed up. Unless you watch the new movie.
Where
they
Maleficent
downplayed her
movie.
so much.
No, they're like
they just made it different.
Yeah.
They just did that whole like villain's perspective type movie where it's like, oh, and make it there and make the villain into the hero because she's the hero of the show. It's her story.
Yeah, but you're right. In that cartoon, I'll tell you what, I had plenty of nightmares. I don't know if I really had nightmares, but she did instill in me the fear of.
Yeah, I haven't seen Sleeping Beauty for a long.
Freddy
long
Krueger
time.
also comes up as a popular villain.
It's one of those horror movie type
horror
villains, which
I think of pop culture villains. I think you're right. Darth Vader, Skeletor, the Shredder.
Yeah, the Shredder was a good one.
The Shredder's well developed. Actually, he is because he has like the history of killing the master of Splinter or something like that, and it's like
he's certainly not a very believable villain because he's just kind of goofy, but then he's serious, and it doesn't. But for kids and Ninja Turtles, I loved it in the 80s version of Ninja Turtle, 80s, 90s.
I liked it in the
King Koopa
in the 80s movie.
Bowser.
I thought Shredder was cool.
Yeah, if we extend into video games, we have some very iconic villains.
Bowser, is that a well-developed character?
Yeah, I mean Mario. More people know about Mario than he's a pop culture icon that it's like Homer Simpson. I mean, they're so pop culture icons that people know them more than they know their ancestry.
So I actually asked this question on Facebook probably 4 years ago now. I just asked, who is the most convincing villain in film, in your opinion? So I guess moving on from iconic villains, I think convincing villain is a completely different can of worms. But I had some great responses. There was a lot of conversation about Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's iconic.
I forgot about the Joker. Why didn't I say the Joker?
And convincing. So, yeah, a lot of conversation about the Joker. And it's hard to talk too much about that, and it's hard to watch that movie knowing that he died soon thereafter. But yeah, there were a lot of good ones.
What other people saying?
My wife mentioned the priest in Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh yeah,
because
the sheriff of Nottingham.
Well, so she mentioned this one specifically because of hypocrisy. He's just this big hypocrite. He should be like a religious figure, inspiring people, but instead he's
a creep.
He's pure evil. Green Goblin was mentioned by my mother-in-law, which
from watching. Does she read the
Willem
comics?
Dafoe? No,
I mean Green Goblin is. I mean that's like he's as iconic as a villain as the Joker. I mean he is. Spider-Man's
he's iconic
Joker.
for sure. As I don't know about convincing in those original ones, but he was definitely played well.
In the Sam Raimi movies, the always make fun of his costume. But Willem Dafoe, like
he's creepy looking.
Like the Weird Al song says, he's creepier without the mask on.
He is. Yeah.
So. I like when he says like it's his Power Ranger mask.
Yeah.
Hans Gruber from Die Hard.
Yeah.
He was just crazy.
Someone said Arnold as Mr. Freeze.
I did bet you on ice. I mean, everything he says,
Revenge
everything.
is a dish best served cold. They take that iconic line and then have Arnold Schwarzenegger say it. It's like
Everything he says is something about ice, and Wow.
Oh, that's terrifying on a different level. Oh,
That
man.
was.
Another really good one was Umbridge from Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
So Voldemort is kind
Evil.
of, and by the way, it's pronounced Voldemort. I didn't know that. There's no T at the end. You don't say the T. T is silent.
Well, I'm going to continue to say Voldemorty.
Voldemort.
No.
Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, she
I
did
mean,
a good job.
We'll go back to
I-
Umbridge.
I have
for
to
a
say, let me
second.
talk about Umbridge because I think in the book, I hated her so much more.
much. Oh, man.
Oh yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Imelda. I
Well,
can't
the
remember
actress.
The actress did.
Oh, she did
really
a great
good
job.
Yeah,
it's
she
not
did.
her.
It's not her fault at all.
It's you can't take what the character that you have in that book trying to portray that in the movie is just too hard because you don't get that psychological, the whole psychological torture that she's trying to do to Harry. It's
Right.
like it's so sadistic.
Yeah, but Umbridge, I think, is a more interesting villain until you get to the 6th and 7th books than Voldemort himself.
Yeah. Well, and that was.
And I love to hate her.
And that's one of those buildups of like these multi-part things where the villain in one particular story might not be all that compelling until you get deeper into the story through multiple books or multiple movies. Like Darth Vader, I was thinking about this. Like, there's the idea that your villain needs to have like a parallel origin story and kind of be just as compelling as your hero, and that it's like, and you can develop this awesome, well-rounded villain. Well-rounded, I don't know.
You want a well-rounded villain. I don't like when they're two-dimensional.
But think of
That
Darth.
happens a lot.
Just
Yeah,
think
it
of your
does.
introduction to Darth Vader. Darth Vader was actually very much in design to be a very flat
It
villain.
was pretty flat.
Yeah, but
to
he
begin
took
with.
control. I mean, when he came, that
Yeah.
music was so intense. You just
But that's the thing. I don't think you absolutely have to follow rules necessarily. It's good to have that compelling villain. But Darth Vader, the way that is presented, his presence, the way in that first movie, you just quickly know this is the bad guy. He's the black guy in black, and you just fall right into it. That's
yeah.
I think you have to be, there's a certain talent in crafting a villain, and sometimes they can be very two-dimensional and
Yeah,
still
like
be
Justice League, the movie had two-dimensional villain. You're like, why do I care about this guy?
And sometimes that
Sometimes two-dimensional works. Sometimes it's just cheap.
because
And it
like
just- it
take
doesn't work.
the Joker in the Dark Knight. You don't have any backstory, but he's
Yeah,
like
he
a
Here's the
hurricane.
thing.
He
though.
took
Here's the
control.
He's
thing.
a hurricane.
I got to say this: just because you don't see the backstory, I think you can tell when the writers have a backstory for that character.
Oh yeah.
Because we don't necessarily need to see it, but I want them to have really thought this through as far as the backstory and how, I want them to have developed that character, even if we don't see it on the screen, if that makes sense, because you can tell a difference.
Yeah, the character has to be a character and not be like, oh, here's just
yeah.
some villain that what I'm trying to say, like there has to be something there. Like say like they have like a lair. You have things in the evil villain's lair to show their background or their personality and show more depth in there. It's not just like
Right, like little Easter eggs throughout
Yeah.
the movie. that
yeah,
kind of thing.
you're like, oh, I understand that this guy has this type of perspective on things, and there might have been because of this, because something you saw or something he said. Like the Joker. The Joker talks about his dad or whatever at one point and stuff like that. Whether anything the Joker says you can't trust, which is also so good. The Joker in the Dark Knight.
So good. Another one that came up, my friend Colton mentioned this one in the 4 years ago post, is Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Oh yeah, that one brings. I've found that. I've never seen the movie.
I've
but
since seen the
read-
movie, and he is such a good villain. Kind of goes along the lines of not having a conscience, kind of like the Joker.
like Hannibal Lecter too. I was thinking of him.
Yeah, Hannibal Lecter. I mean, he won an Oscar for that performance, being like 11 minutes in the movie.
Oh really? He was only in 11
He wasn't
minutes?
in it very much.
Oh,
I never
wow.
saw Silence of the Lambs, but
I did.
yeah, that's what I've heard.
Silence of the Lambs was creepy. It was
Yeah.
on TV during the
It's
Olympics.
supposed to be creepy. Another one that was mentioned was Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus in Gladiator.
That's
Such a good villain, and you just love to hate the guy because
Yeah,
he's
you
just
love
so
that.
slimy.
Sometimes that's a very satisfying feeling in a movie where you're like, and then when they get it at the end, you're just like, yeah.
Oh man, here's a really good one. Rocky IV, the Russian.
The Russians are just like always the villain, though. In
Oh,
every
Not
James
in
Bond
but
movie,
he changes it.
He
Yeah.
kills Apollo, and you're
Yeah,
just
you're
like,
right.
you're like, this guy. Who is this guy?
Spoilers.
We should just put in the category villains.
No,
the
it's
Russians.
If you haven't seen Rocky
If you haven't
IV,
seen-
please go see Rocky
Yeah.
IV. It's so good. It was my favorite one to watch as a kid. By
Yeah,
no
always
means is it the
everyone's-
best Rocky movie. It's no Rocky V, which is awful, but it's not the worst, but it's not the best.
Everybody
but it
loves
was
Rocky
It was the
IV.
funnest to watch as a kid.
But you should watch any Rocky movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
they
Rocky.
are actually pretty good.
Let's see what else. Oh, Siamese cats from Lady and the Tramp. I've got a question about that later. Let's see. Yeah, Lady and the Tramp has some creepy things in it. Scar from Lion King is a really good villain.
Yeah, the classic Disney villains. They like there's a pile of them. You know.
Yeah, Brett 4 years ago said the Emperor from Star Wars.
Yeah, I just think he is the villain. Darth Vader is just it's basically in the end
He's
more
just
of
a
his
tragic-
story. He's a tragic hero.
Yeah,
and
he is.
the Emperor is the real creepy guy.
So my mother-in-law this time around, when I posted this yesterday, she said that she hates Jafar.
Like hates Jafar.
Hates
like
Jafar.
Like
Oh,
hates.
wow.
As in he's a good villain.
He's a good villain. Okay,
And-
because there can
I
be.
just
I
Like,
have
get
to
the-
concur.
No, Jafar.
He's
is.
actually how I pictured Satan as a kid.
I hope though next year with the live action Aladdin they can pull off a good Jafar.
Right.
Jafar
I hope so.
has that creepy.
I don't know who's the actor playing him.
I don't know. I had some good discussions though about villains, and my sister Amanda mentioned that she likes when writers create villains who use decent logic. She used a couple of examples. One of her favorites was Syndrome from The Incredibles. The Sphinx from the Fablehaven series, which hasn't been made into a film, but it's a book.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentioned Thanos, which I didn't agree with. Because there's a video that Jenny Nicholson put out. I don't know if you've ever watched any of her videos
I
on
just
YouTube.
watched it. I saw that you posted it, and I watched it. Last
It's pretty
night.
funny, right?
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
She's really good. I like her take on
Maybe
things.
we'll post that on the Facebook page and
Yeah,
and
I'll
the
share
I
social
haven't seen
media.
that
that.
with you guys, but it's really funny. Anyway, tragic backstories. She mentioned that villains are good with tragic backstories, like Darth Vader, Snape. Snape is a really good villain.
So I don't consider Snape a
You-
villain.
but he is a lot of the
But
books.
he is.
Until there's some revelation later, he's totally a villain.
No, he does so
He's
many
a
good
villain.
things.
He does
I mean,
good, but from Harry's
But
perspective,
Harry's perspective
he's
is
such
like
a villain.
Harry's always like targeting him as like, oh, he's the one behind whatever.
he
the
might
current,
just be a mean old guy, but I don't consider him a villain. He just has issues. He has
definitely-
childhood. He was bullied.
Well, that's the tragic backstory
he
that
was
she's
bullied.
talking about.
That's the
There's
yeah.
tragic backstories.
So-
he was bullied by Harry's
I
dad.
don't know.
Gollum was another one, and he's a villain. You can
Yeah.
argue it,
Oh,
but he's a
Gollum-
villain.
Gollum's a
he
villain.
is.
He has a
but-
tragic backstory, and I think that's an important element of a good villain as well. One other thing that I'll mention, I know I'm kind of taking the reins here a lot, but
No, that's
there were
fine.
some good discussions here. Our family friend Tyson mentioned that a lot of villains are just very contrived. And I'll just read it. You would have a hard time believing that a character like that would actually behave in such a manner or believe their own supposed motivations. So they're not believable. Many villains just exist for the plot and to give the protagonist something to defeat. Power Rangers, Care Bears, most kids' cartoons, and sadly this can extend to movies as well. Like previous Batman villains he mentions.
Well, what you should do is watch.
Eric's probably twisting in his chair right now because he loves cartoons, but
Villain. I mean, you have to have a good villain. I mean, that's the only thing that ticks me off about the Disney lately, because they haven't had a good iconic villain where I'm just like, I want that villain to win. And then they have cop out villains like I feel like
want
in
the
Big
villain
Hero
to
6. Big Hero 6 was just another villain who was like,
Well-
oh, my daughter got sucked into a wormhole, so I gotta have revenge.
I push back on
it
that.
just-
I thought that villain had an interesting reveal, and it was I liked Big
I
Hero
liked
6.
it, but I just felt like they reverted back to old things. I was like, come on, give a twist that we haven't seen before. And instead of the revenge thing, I just feel like that's too easy.
Within that movie, there's a reveal on the villain and everything. I thought I was satisfied with that.
I was happy with Wreck-It Ralph. That was just the guy who wanted world domination in a sense. I like villains who just don't have a backstory. They're just like, I want to win. I want to take over the video game
Eric
world.
likes the more two-dimensional.
But Wreck-It Ralph, the villain, is King Candy.
Yeah.
And King Candy is an interesting villain. And then when you figure out more about him, he's actually... I think he's a good villain.
Right.
After you learn...
I don't like villains' backstory. Like, I want the villain just to be evil. Like in Spider-Man 2, when they made Doc Ock this nice professor, and then his arms.
Eric is the exact... He just wants to get in there.
He just wants two-dimensional, but here's the thing.
Not two-dimensional, just
Eric,
I want them to be evil.
My question to you, though, is anyone just born evil?
See...
Do you just are you born evil, or are you made to be evil?
People are made to be evil. I don't think they're born, but some people are just eventually are evil.
I think sometimes it just has to do with the context of the story. Some stories, you just jump right in, like when you're watching A New Hope, start with Darth Vader, and you're just like, that guy's the villain, and it's satisfying. Yeah, kind of a thing. It's like, oh, I understand.
Like Saruman. I don't need to know if he was a good guy or not. I just know he was...
clearly was a good guy, and he got seduced by Sauron.
Yeah.
Sauron, Sauron.
That's interesting to me.
Are you talking about Sauron?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, why did he just make their names so too similar?
Yeah, they did.
Tolkien was
Not
just-
Saruman.
Sauron.
Is Saruman the...
Saruman.
Sauron's
Count
the white.
Dooku?
Okay, not the white dude.
Now a
The
rainbow.
all-seeing eye.
The all-seeing eye.
Now that's a villain. I mean, I don't need to know. I mean, he was just world domination, and that was awesome. I
Eric
like
has
him.
a defense for like, I don't need to know. He just wants someone, I'm bad.
He just wants a bad guy.
He just wants a bad
That's
guy.
fine.
I mean,
a
like-
lot of people, though, Eric, really want a villain that they feel is realistic, that actually has motivations that stem from something in real life. That's because otherwise they're just like, I don't care about cartoons. I don't, a lot of people don't really just want to sit down and watch a cartoon, like a Saturday morning cartoon, and watch the Shredder and Krang, right? They want something more developed and, something you can really
I think it's important to relate to the characters. You do, but then you're like, if you're like then more sympathetic, then does it justify what they're doing is bad? Like in Spider-Man 3, when Spider-Man with the Sandman, he's like, oh, I have a daughter. Even though you killed my uncle, I'm going to let you go because you have a family that you need to take care of. You're like, no, you're a criminal. You need to be locked up. You don't care who you don't have a daughter. You killed my uncle.
Spider-Man 3, everybody. Okay, just want to mention a couple more, and then I have a question for you guys, if that's okay. My friend Himuli mentioned Tom Cruise as Vincent in Collateral, and he mentioned Denzel Washington as Lonzo in Training Day, which I haven't seen those movies. He actually mentioned the Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, and I loved the twist in that movie. When he sorry.
I haven't
was
seen
good.
the ending
I
of it.
liked-
I've
I
only
liked
seen
that.
half of it.
Because that
was
was a
really
good
good.
motivation. I mean,
If you want to spoil
the
it, you
punk
might as well
government
spoil it
came
for me
in
because
and
it's all good.
took
I
away
should have
their
seen it, but-
jobs. Sorry, I'm a kind of
Sorry,
anti-government. When they
we were
take away
talking
jobs.
over each
getting a
other
little
there.
heated.
He's getting
Sorry.
really heated.
I know.
Okay,
that's okay.
that was
That's okay.
justifiable of him being a villain.
Like here's my
Not
question.
really.
Here's my
Never
question to you
justified.
guys. So you remember in The Incredibles, my sister mentioned Syndrome. At the end, he makes a mistake and he gets caught monologuing.
He's like,
You
oh, you
remember
caught me
You caught me
monologuing.
monologuing. And he kind of makes fun of this monologuing thing that villains do. Now, clearly, there's a place for that. Or there has to be almost for
You have to
storytelling.
have.
Because you have to catch up the
There's
audience.
expositional type
There's
stuff.
exposition. I don't like monologuing because to me it takes me out of the story being like, why is the villain just standing there explaining his motives to this person that he's about to destroy?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
just
true.
killed the person,
Sometimes, yeah, it's like, why don't they just Why do the villain has the opportunity to kill the hero right now? So you have to build in some motivation as to why they want to
Why do they want to explain themselves?
why do they want to explain it? Because sometimes they just want to rub it into the heroes. Like you have like, or they're trying to turn the hero to their side, or give some motivation as to why they'd monologue.
Right. There's two reasons from a writing perspective. You're waiting for someone to get there to rescue them at the last minute, right?
Yeah.
Or you're waiting for them to get up the courage or something to rescue themselves.
Or just to explain the plot.
Or you're explaining the plot.
So that when they hatch their evil plan, okay, I know why all these weird things are happening because he explained it before. Yeah. Which could,
I like the monologue because I guess I do it.
Well, Eric is the villain of the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent.
Which is good. We need this. We need this contrary opinion.
I will take over your radios and make you, as the brain says,
he was born
try to take over the world.
Here's one example of monologuing that bothers me because it's just too far, and it's in the first Harry Potter book or movie. It's very similar. When Harry finds Professor Quirrell at the end of all the obstacles.
Oh yeah,
and for some reason, Professor Quirrell needs to explain how it's not Snape. Of course, no one suspected poor stuttering Professor Quirrell. And no one, he explains everything and just explains it in so much detail. And it's like, this guy would not be doing this right now, but the audience has to know this information.
Yeah.
So it's either he explains it or Dumbledore does at the end.
Does he do that in the book? I don't remember. Oh, he does.
He does do that in the book.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, because in the movie, it's more subtle that you don't realize Snape is doing stuff. But in the book, I didn't think you.
No, he does it. And the actor in the first movie drives me a little crazy, but that's another conversation. But is there a way to decrease monologuing? Is there a way to put that exposition in another way so that it doesn't have to happen and you don't have to... Some people like the monologuing, and that's okay, Eric. But is there a way to get rid of it in a story?
I think they can do it when they're fighting. I don't remember Thanos monologuing, or if he is, he's talking to him while he's fighting him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
And he's like,
okay, yeah. So during the fight, they're not just a helpless victim at that point. They're still
talking about.
They're still in the running for winning the fight.
They're just. I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to get around it because some details the audience needs to know, and some details the hero needs to know, the protagonist and other people need to know to make the story.
And it's true.
Out.
And if you knew that stuff earlier in the movie, it would give away a lot of information, and it wouldn't be as exciting.
You just need as far as from someone who's writing it, they just need to make it make sense, and they need to ask it. The characters have to talk at some point, and you have to know what's going on.
And I think of The Dark Knight. I mean, the Joker doesn't really monologue to the Batman, but when Joker's upside down, he's just like, "This is just too much fun," and he kind of explains
when he talks to Two-Face.
He's like, "I don't want to kill you. I just want chaos, and we just haven't." And so I think that when maybe there was a little disposition there I liked.
Yeah, there's some good exposition that goes on outside of the monologuing. I wonder if it's a necessary evil or if it can be gotten rid of by some good writing skills.
It's a necessary evil. And particularly in movies, sometimes that monologue thing can be done in an interesting way. Where like the situation that they're in or whatever, like maybe he can't get to the hero because the hero is trapped in something or whatever and is unable. So what am I trying to say here? Is like in The Dark Knight when he's monologuing to Two-Face to turn Two-Face to his side. I mean, it's really just interesting to watch Heath Ledger play that character, and he's dressed up as a nurse, and it's all just like there's interesting stuff going on, pushing the story forward. As long as you got some forward momentum. If that monologue stops the story where you're like, ugh, he's monologuing, and you're thinking about it, then it's not being done right. But if you're reading it and you're not, or watching it or reading the story, and you're not thinking, oh, he's monologuing, then they're doing it right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I like that.
I think there is. I think people could try harder to not, or at least have the monologuing make sense. So it's not that they're just not killing them for longer, so so another person could come save them, or they could save themselves. Make it so that it just makes more sense for the villain to be doing what they're doing, and then you can get your exposition in there.
Yeah, it's just moving the story forward, what's needed for the story, making the situation
Fill the audience in what's
sense.
going on.
Yeah. I mean, it just you have to have your characters talk, and you have to have your characters, you have to know what's going on.
And there's a quote I like from... Oh, sorry. I was getting the thumbs down or something.
No, you're
I
good.
don't know what happened.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So Robert Ebert says, each film is only good as its villain. Since the hero and the gimmicks tend to repeat from film to film, only a great villain can transform a good try into a triumph. And I think that's true. I mean, I think about like the Disney movies, like Aladdin is a typical dude who just, I need to save the world. But then you have Jafar, and I think that's what makes, or the Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. You just remember those villains. I mean, as a kid, I think of villains, it's always the Disney. And the heroes, they're okay, but it's the villains that really bring out a movie for me.
I think what you're saying is really interesting, and I think this supports your argument a little bit of two-dimensional villains, because Disney has some really great villains, like Ursula.
Scared
Like,
me as a
she's
kid.
terrifying.
I could not
But she
watch
doesn't
that
have a
movie.
tragic backstory, or...
And you don't care.
Yeah, you don't care. She's just this creepy thing that lives under the ocean that I won't... That looks like one of my old piano teachers. No, I'm just...
Mostly,
I'm just kidding.
I guess what I want to feel the heroes are challenged by the villain. That's what I guess I don't like when it comes to villains. So I guess if the villain can be still two-dimensional or have the backstory, but I want the hero challenged.
So you want it to be a real... Something that's really affecting the hero.
And I
along his
think
journey.
that's where Marvel... In their movies, their villains are downplayed so much.
Well,
I never feel like most of their
When you're
heroes...
talking about villains, there has to be a hero on the other side.
Yeah, there
you can't
has
just,
to.
Yeah, and so that they're yin and yang. They have to work to get there for the story to work. There has to be both of them.
I think that's why the Joker and Batman work so well, because the Joker even says, like, I don't want to kill you. You're making this all possible for me. We're like, this is the relationship that I want
gets
to have.
off on the whole relationship.
Yeah,
and
which is kind of plays off in Lego Batman as well. It's kind of funny. But anyway, good discussion.
Yeah, really good.
I mean, villains... I think we like the villains because... You're right. I mean, because there's inner demons in all of us, and we're like, we don't want to be that, but we're capable of becoming the villain.
Yeah, a lot of times there's stories that people are their own villain. The protagonist is their own main obstacle. Or another times you have it switched. You have the antagonist being really the protagonist. You got Ocean's 11, right? Where it's really...
Well,
I mean, you still have a villain, but...
You still have a villain, but there can be stories where people are doing bad things, like robbing a casino.
Yeah.
Where those are the heroes. So in that sense, you don't even consider them villains.
Or someone's running from the FBI. The FBI, they're the good guys in this case, but they need to be... They're still the villain, right? They're still the villain in that situation. The protagonist is that.
Movies are like that.
Yeah. So within the movie, it defines what its own hero is and what its own villain is, and whether you like that or not. Because Ocean's 11 might offend someone like, well, they're robbed. These are criminals that are the
Such
heroes.
a fun movie,
but it's fun.
Such a fun movie, and that cast is just so fun to watch together. But anyway, I digress, I suppose.
All right. Well, it's that time. You were tying the shoes, zipping up the sweater.
No. I'm not finished with you yet.
Oh.
I've got some questions.
Oh.
I think we need to wrap this up.
Yeah, we need a good conclusion.
Well, we need a good conclusion.
Here's
here.
my conclusion. So since Brett's getting antsy. Let's just do top two, but I want top two animated villains, and I want top two it could be animated or normal villains that you think are terrifying, either in TV or movies.
Okay.
Ready, go.
Movies.
Animated or otherwise.
Darth Vader.
Okay. Live action. Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark. I always found him to be an interesting villain. He's like...
What about the German guy that's like really slimy and sleazy?
Those are just like
when
creepy...
he's taking his hanger out?
The creepy Nazis and stuff. Yeah, those are just fun, but they're all... It's all about Belloc, because Belloc is like that rival to Jones that has no...
He's the Jones without a conscience.
Yeah, has no conscience. It's like he's into archaeology for the fame and money. Not that you could even find fame and money in archaeology, but... So Belloc, and then I like the Joker. Well, there's so many villains out there. And then animated, I just didn't really think about that when up to this. I do think that you guys have said some good animated villains. Syndrome, I forgot about that. He has an origin story, goes through the whole thing, and it's a nice reveal for him, like who he is, you know.
I guess I think the only villains I relate to are the cartoons I watched as a kid. I mean, you have like the villains from Power Rangers,
Mr. Freeze in the Batman the Animated Series. That's a good villain,
I think
and
of
the Joker
Skeletor.
too.
I think of Shredder. I think of Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe's.
It's hard to pick just like two, you know.
The ghosts from Ghostbusters.
So what were your top two? Top two animated, top two other.
Okay, I guess the Shredder and Darth Vader, because even they're both go hand in hand, because I've had dreams many times where Darth Vader's after me, and I've had dreams many times where the Shredder's after me. I'm running through the sewers and the Foot Clan's after me, and so I guess I'm scared of the Shredder and Darth Vader.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
My top two
got?
animated villains are probably the cats from Lady and the Tramp. They're seriously creepy. The rat in that movie is a close second. Well, I guess kind of tied, but I think Jafar, since that's how I pictured Satan as a kid, would have to be my second one. If we're not talking villains, but just someone that creeps you out in an animated movie, I gotta say Anastasia's grandma in Anastasia. And it just has to do with how they animated the movie. It's she just moves so unnaturally. It's just like,
yeah, it's true.
What's wrong with this woman?
She does seem creepy. Rasputin is funny.
Rasputin's
he was a creepy villain, though.
All right, and my top, I guess, all around other villains, it would be Gus from Breaking Bad / Better Call Saul. He's a really good villain.
Isn't Walter himself a villain?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's his own.
But that's one of those things where he
becomes the villain. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's his journey from being the good guy to the villain.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's not the villain until, he becomes a villain fairly quickly, but more a justified one. My last one is Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Okay.
There we go. There you have it.
So don't be a villain.
All right. Where can people get in contact with us?
You can follow us on Twitter at Geek Nerd Tangent. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Geek Nerd Tangent. On Instagram at instagram.com/Geek Nerd Tangent. Give us a call anytime. Leave us a voicemail at 801-769-6668. Or send us an email at geeknerdtangent@gmail.com.
And let us know what iconic voices you would like to hear.
And you can also find us on some other podcasting venues like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Radio Public, and hopefully soon Spotify.
Yeah, hopefully soon. All right. Yeah, leave us a voicemail. Get in contact with us. We'd love to hear what you guys think. Leave us reviews. That's all good.
And if we get so many numbers, we might shave our heads.
That's not going to happen.
That
my head's
could
too big
motivate
and it
you
wouldn't
guys
work.
to share us, so we'll shave our heads.
Probably not.
Eric will.
Hope you guys have a good week. I'm Brett.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Matt, and I just have to say, good.
Excellent.
So many mouth noises.
I haven't made any mouth noises.
You just made like 6.
No, I didn't.
Like 6.
No, I didn't.
Like 6.
No, I didn't.
Like 6.
No, I didn't.